Today's episode is brought to you by Imagine What? World Building in a Box. Have you ever watched a movie or visited a theme park and thought, I can build a world like this? Well, now you can bring your wildest ideas to life with the Imagine What box. Imagine What is a monthly subscription box for creatives of all ages. Every month, you'll also get access to an exclusive interview with a pro, where industry experts from theme parks, publishing, and beyond share their creative secrets. Ready to start imagining? Well, head over to imaginewhatbox.com to subscribe today. Use the code UNREAL, that's UNREEL, at checkout for a special discount on your first box. All right, welcome to Unreal Attractions, the podcast that takes real theme park designers and has them overanalyze fictional theme parks that never existed, except in our favorite film and television episodes. Today, we'll be diving into Luna Park as featured in Futurama. Joining me today, we have Kyle Prestenbach. Now, I knew Kyle in my early days at Imagineering, though I don't think we ever actually did anything together because he was with all the geniuses in R&D. All the smart people who were shoved into another building a couple blocks away where they can do their smart people stuff. And we were over in the creative money spenders department where we took their ideas, and which were already expensive, and we just added more and more dollar signs to it. So Kyle, welcome to Unreal Attractions.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you having me.
So could you give everybody a nice little low-down elevator pitch of who Kyle is and your background,
Sure.
what you've done in the industry? You might want to get a little bit closer to the mic too.
Yeah. So, Kyle Prestenbach. I started out my career at the Walt Disney Company probably about 20 years ago, a little under 20 years ago, in one of the R&D groups, developing systems and methods, as you call them, for new innovations in theme park stuff. When I went to college, I was kind of a virtual reality researcher, and that kind of turned into an interest in figuring out ways that we can bring interactivity into physical places and have a little bit of a technical mind, a little bit of a creative mind that led to several years at R&D and then transitioned into some real theme park attraction stuff that got physically installed. We did a lot of interactivity, spent a lot of time during the early days and then the latter days of the Magic Band deployment and installations, turned that into a little bit of time on some pretty cool intellectual properties. I was tied to the Marvel franchise for a little while and tied to the Star Wars franchise for a little while, and got to play a lot with the Millennium Falcon ride, got to play a lot with some stuff at Marvel that never came to be. Took my leave from Disney, spent about 7 or 8 years doing similar experiential development for cruise ships. Figured that it was an interesting, isolated environment that had a lot of opportunity for immersion, a lot of captive audience kind of experiences that we could do, and made a few cool things over there for Princess Cruises, working for Carnival Corporation, and then have spent the last few years developing some of my own ventures. I have some what I like to call, what my wife maybe likes to call, a lot of silly little ideas that need to exist. Decided to kind of take a tackle and tackle some of those silly little ideas and see if any of them have legs, and some of them might come to fruition one day.
And I want to point out this is a 2-for episode because we are joined by your newest intern.
There is, yeah. Underneath me, there is a 0-year-old or a 4-week-old who was just born back at the end of October. So she is nestled inside of a device, an alien device of some sort, and I'm holding on to a bottle of milk. And at some point, we may hear a gurgle or not. Maybe she'll sleep through the whole thing. We'll see.
Now, I'm excited to dive into this episode. When I mentioned Futurama to you, you seem to be chomping at the bit that this is a series that you really appreciate.
Yeah, it was. It's interesting. Like, I actually didn't discover Futurama until after it ran its course. I guess the second or third time. well before the new iteration on Hulu, but around the time the entire series was placed on Netflix, we had my first child. And when we had my first child, my wife and I, whatever, we were finding things that we could just kind of put on the background and listen to and watch and whatever. And there were two television shows, Futurama and Frasier, for whatever reason.
And the crazy part is too, is this is in the second episode of the series.
So
So
that's
Futurama
yeah,
came out swinging with like one of the greatest
right.
episodes
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
some of the most memorable
It's
lines.
interesting, like if you think about it, what is this, 2009? This was 1999.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that don't know, Futurama is produced by the same folks who did The Simpsons, right? And so there was this established writers group, right? Like how did they decide that the second episode was going to poke fun at the modern theme, right? Like while the pilot doesn't feature the theme, and the last 20 minutes of the last episode, season 10 episode, don't feature the theme. The first few minutes of the last episode have them returning back to Liverpool. And so, and to some extent, there's a full bookend that, with the exception of the first 20 minutes and the last 20 minutes, the entire series is bookended by two visits. And I don't think they ever visited anywhere in the middle, at least
I don't
not
think
in a
so.
plot sense, but two visits of this theme park that fully bookend the entire series.
Yeah, so let's start diving into the design and operations and everything of this theme park on the moon. And one thing I want to point out is right off the bat, because it's on the moon, it's in a giant dome, which countless people will insist Disneyland is also under a giant weather-controlled dome. So I don't know if that was a deliberate choice, if that was the inspiration, or just a complete coincidence. But I have stories from when I worked at the park of people telling me that we should turn off the rain because it's too cold.
Like the dome land, the dome world was like always this kind of cool concept to think of back in the 90s, or even when all these things were first developed. It was interesting though that for a show that's about the future and pretending to be about the past, that I think if we look at like parks in the Middle East, they are like now fully enclosed, right? Like the dome lands do actually fundamentally exist, right? Like,
so their motto is the happiest place orbiting the Earth. And the first time we see the park from the outside, we see that they have a spinning rocket ride, which is a no-brainer, Ferris wheel, roller coaster, a monorail. And then later on, a character mentions the tilt-a-whirl. But there's some other amazing attractions within the park. But first, I want to get through Moon Street USA, which is their main street. Great pun, right off the bat. But it's funny that they kept the turn of the century era. I don't know if you noticed in the background, but they do have a Club 33 and a half.
oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so when Bender's talking to their mascot who's trying to take away his booze, their little placard in the back says 33 and a half next to the door in reference to the Club 33 at Disneyland and now at Disney World. But yeah, they have the elements from Main Street. They have straw hatters, albeit they are robots. Souvenir stand, Moonaviers. I can't even say it. So it would be Moonaviers. I can't. It's souvenirs, but with moon.
Moonaviers.
Yeah. And then talking about some of the other souvenirs that they sell in the park, I will say they don't have the same pizzazz that Lester's Possum Park has. It's a lot of like moon hats, and then over at the souvenir stand, a lot of merchandise that actually looks like stuff it looks like the shirts you would buy off Etsy to wear to Luna Park with your family. It says like,
I have formed a theory about what type of park this probably is, kind of based on like those things that you noticed, right? Like the t-shirts that aren't that great, the what is that called? There's a place, a game center, right, that just has like
the arcade,
the silliest little arcade stuff, right? And the way that initially some of the characters, Kirchen and Leela, like is not all that interested in visiting this.
No, it's correct.
There's another series that Leela and like the rest of the gang kind of actually seem to have an interest in. Like we'll talk about that in another episode.
Yeah,
but this
we're already plotting out the next
they weren't
season.
That excited about. So I've formed a theory that like I think Luna Park is the equivalent of like County Fair in in their year 3000 mindset. For it to be in this kind of like, it's out of the way. No one really wants to go to the moon. There's a bunch of small, like, rinky things, but the line was ridiculously long to get into this park. All of those
Sure.
things, like, for me, are very similar to, like, some of my friends and colleagues who, like, let's go hang out at the county fair, or maybe, like, let's go hang out at a Ren fair, right? Like the permanent Ren fair style
Or
installation.
like the smaller regional parks, like Fun Spot or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Fun spot, exactly, right? Like this isn't the place to go, but it's a place that a lot of people seem to go to, and it's a little bit rundown. In that opening sequence, you can see like there's a lot of trash on the floor, on the ground. No
Oh, I
one's
have that
really
note.
picking
Every
that stuff
trash
up.
can is overflowing in this park.
Yeah, it's
Every
overflowing
single
with
one.
trash.
And there's trash on the ride path.
Right. You mentioned the robot musicians, like in the last episode of the series. They're back. It's the same people, but they're aged. Like there's a message in there that like these people just are just like working here forever, and they're never gonna stop because it's just, and it doesn't seem like they're having as good of a time at the end of the series than they were when they were young musicians playing their.
I just want to circle back real quick to the arcade you just mentioned, and this is right up your alley because you're experienced in VR. But some of the
Right.
games featured are Mortal Cooperation, Gender Neutral Pac-Man, Skee
Okay.
Ball, Virtual Skee Ball, and Virtual Skee Ball,
Steve. Right.
which is something
Yeah.
R&D I'm sure
Yeah.
spent years and
And
years
this
in.
is one of those cues for me was that those did not seem like they would be popular attractions of the to go visit. They actually kind of seemed like they were just collected over time. Like at some point, skee ball was new, so it's in the room, right? And then, oh well, I have virtual skee balls new. Let's
That's a
stick that in the room right next to it. Virtual, that's new. Let's stick that in the room next to it. So just the junk arcade room.
yeah. No, you're bringing up excellent points, and that actually really goes into the big dark ride that goes off into the moon, which I have. Oh, it's called Destination Moon, and that is the rover
Destination
ride
Moon.
that Leela and Fry get to go on. But as they're driving out on the lunar surface, they have like the wooden cutouts of
They
like the
do.
craters and everything, even though
They
they're
do.
driving past real ones.
They
But
do.
they're still
They
like
do.
bad disrepair.
They do. And,
Um,
and it's the year 3000, right? Um,
yeah, you would think
like
they'd be doing
in
something
the
better.
in the lore of Futurama, people have like forgotten how the moon landing actually worked. They've
Yeah,
forgotten like everything about the moon. And I did a little bit of digging in this, and I guess apparently like it's mentioned maybe in passing in later parts of the series. But like there was a great war. At some point there was like large land lunar bases. Somebody lost a fight and then they lost all history. Yet the theme park stayed there, right? And for that ride, it's supposed to be this informational yet entertaining tour of the history of the moon. And Leela makes a comment when Fry is really interested in seeing the real moon that ride is not that popular. It's like an Epcot ride, right?
yeah. She says it has a short
And
line
Epcot
because
isn't.
it's educational.
Yeah, it's short line because it's education. So like this is the living with the land ride, right?
Yeah, there you go.
For everyone in Futurama world. And what's even more hilarious is that like nothing in this like history of the moon is accurate. Fry
Yeah,
noticed
actually,
this.
that comes down to one of my favorite gags through that entire series. And again, in episode 2, where they talk about, the people dreaming of going to the moon and that inspirational mind of Ralph Crampton saying, one day, Alice, one day, bang, zoom, straight to the moon.
Yeah.
That's the funniest gag.
It is because they take that seriously, at least in this attraction, and believing that was an emotional desire of people. Like in our narratives of like real, at least the history that we imagine and understand, right? This is like they've equated that to Galilee, and those.
Yep.
I don't know. Kind of think of like another attraction, like the scenes in Spaceship Earth, where we're talking about like figuring out travel and figuring out space and figuring out these things. That's what that's supposed to relate to. And it's obviously poking fun at it because this was not at all what this fella actually said or thought or meant in the series. But in the future, in Futurama, they believe that was the inspirational vehicle that got people to the moon.
So other attractions include Whalers of the Sea of Tranquility, which is their Pirates of the Caribbean spoof.
Right.
But like one of the most interesting things happens besides the catchy song. It is a catchy little tune they have. But
Yeah.
one of the animatronics recognizes Bender from high school, which
Yeah, they
goes
went to
into
high
the
school
whole
together.
role of robots and animatronics in this world.
Yeah.
Now, this is actually the second episode in a row that features a spoof of the Country Bears, because we
There
have
is.
the Goofy Gopher review presented by Monsanto as one of the
Presented by
entertainment
Monsanto.
offerings. And
Yeah.
it's funny because it's almost the same exact setup as Lester, with the figures, popping out from like behind craters or mounds of dirt, which isn't something you actually see in the Country Bears, but it just becomes this cliche and whenever you spoof that show, which is bizarre. But yeah, and interestingly enough, Fry complains about the show, and then the character reacts in real time
Right.
because it's a robot, and that's what robots do
Right.
now. And it says
Right.
direct all
Right.
complaints to the Monsanto Corporation, which,
Right.
Monsanto keeping up their tradition of sponsoring theme park attractions. Good on them, I suppose.
I've read elsewhere in the lore that like that sponsorship later got retconned as the Monsanto Corporation, which is heavily featured in
Oh,
later
interesting.
seasons of Futurama. But by script, right, it's Monsanto,
Yeah.
which by just saying just pure parody, right, is a connection to the theme park attractions that are funded or sponsored by any kind of oddly random company that does or does not seem to be related to the show that people are watching. The thing that was fun about the Goofy Gophers, right, was that it didn't seem like anyone who was in the audience was actually enjoying that show, which I think is a gag, like it's a running gag that I think we see in a lot of these TV shows, that for whatever reason you're led to believe that the Country Bears was boring or was not something that you wanted. Like it was the sleeper amusement show, and that's at least how it's projected in Goofy Gophers, as this is not entertaining, not that fun.
Yeah, I think over the years, I think the Country Bears took a lot of strays from the Chuck E. Cheese performers.
Oh right,
And so
yeah,
I think, people's,
yeah,
brains might crosswire in saying that, like, "Oh, I didn't enjoy Country Bears," because they didn't enjoy
that is true.
the Chuck E. Cheese band.
That is true. Yeah.
Let me see. We can talk about the cast member costumes, and I got to feel bad for the employees of Luna Park because they are given the dumbest hats. The guy working
So there's a few different of them, right? Like there's the cast members who are in like some kind of character costume.
yeah,
Then there's the police,
the
the moon
security
patrol,
guards and the
right?
cotton candy, which is Orlon candy.
And they've got some ridiculous hats, right?
Yeah, it's straight up
And
just
I don't
like a
remember
moon.
what are the other character costumes.
Yeah, it was I have the guy's name. Crater Face is the walk around character
Crater
that tries to
Face,
take
love them.
super cool
Yeah,
costume.
still can't figure out how a real head goes in there. Maybe he was an alien.
Yep.
Inside of the cardboard, he would have been yeah, maybe he was an alien, but he seems like he's another example of like it's a strange environment to work in because he doesn't seem to be really excited about this job. He's excited when he first talks to Bender, but then as soon as Bender like gives him his own, he is
Shoves a bottle in
immediately
his eye.
dejected. Right, shows a bottle in his eye, which is actually also like a great reference to two things, right? A great
Mhm.
reference to The Man in the Moon, right? The original movie, right? But also kind of a great reference to Horizons. Every time right, you remember like the second scene or whatever from the Horizons at The Man in the Moon with the spaceship kind of
Mhm.
falling into the ocean. And every time I see that scene, I wonder if they are trying to make both references. I hope that they are. For me, it was a great reference. But yeah, the character gets so dejected. And I imagine and goes about the entire rest of his day with the bottles, but it doesn't.
I just want to say operationally, it's a bizarre choice to have your walk around characters double as security and tell guests they can't bring in their own alcohol. That'd be like Snow White walking up and saying, "I'm sorry, this is a non-smoking area."
Yeah, yeah. But like, what if he wasn't like? What if it wasn't a costume? Like, what if like he was just this? That was his alien's height, right?
Yeah. Let me see. Just going back in my notes, one piece of merchandise I wanted to point out. So, circling back a little bit more, they have T-shirts that say "I'm was stupid on the moon," and they have magnets that say "My other car is a Porsche on the moon." And what part of the moon don't you understand? Like, that's all pretty lame. But they also had some like hanging lunar modules up on the gift card. But I think my favorite one is they have a sipper, and it is a telescope, and then the lid is a moon, and the straw goes through that. Awesome design. Like that should be in a real park somewhere, because
I don't think I caught that. Like, I don't think I caught. I know I can see. I'm like trying to scroll into some pictures of that scene. I don't think I saw the telescope.
Yeah, it's towards the bottom. They don't pick it up or acknowledge it at all. But I press pause a lot when we do these episodes. So I try to pick up all the small little things in the background.
How does it work? What is the mechanic?
So like the sipper itself, you put the liquid in a telescope, and then the lid is like a screw-on moon. So it looks like the telescope has a moon sitting on top of it, and then the straw comes out of there.
Nice.
There's also something else.
Kind of like the
Yeah, those things are. I mean, at what point are you not a popcorn bucket anymore, and you're just a plastic sculpture with a strap?
Right.
Like you could hold like 4 pieces of popcorn in some of them.
Right.
But yeah, that sipper I thought was just super cool. And then I think another part that you and I can really relate to is this notion that this park was designed by the Fungineers. They are the Imagineers of the moon.
Yeah. And it's mentioned like during the overture of the attraction while they're riding through it. It's like it's meant to instill this belief that like you're in something that is like super well engineered, paramount of creativity. And I think you said this before, right? Paramount of creativity. Yet the ride itself is just in a bunch of like cardboard cutouts.
It's weird because these are people who have a degree in fungineering, according to Leela.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I think about covers my notes. Yeah, they only spend like the first half of the episode on the moon, and then the rest is them trying to get back to the base, and then Amy playing the ancient claw machine, which actually I do have that in my notes. That is like one thing that has like devolved in technology is how to load a claw machine. Because right now you just open up the little glass on the side, but that one, they straight up, you take the top off the machine, and then the employee has this belt with a giant Doc Ock arm that lifts up the crate and shakes it all down.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It's not the most efficient way to do things.
Was the claw machine, that was what they were delivering, right?
Yeah. No, they're delivering the plushes to go inside of it.
So they're delivering the plushes that go inside the claw machine. Okay.
And then Amy drops the keys to the ship in there.
Yeah. I don't know, like, I don't know how realistic, I mean, it's not, right? The delivery fellow at this place, and maybe this is just yet another example of why, like, I think that this place is like a county fair. Like, there's a guy at the delivery stand or station who's just kind of like in a wife beater, like hanging out with his, like, just sitting there in the chair. He doesn't seem to care about his job at all. And I don't remember how he accepts the delivery.
Basically tells him to drop it off. Like,
yeah, like he kind of like tells him to just drop it off and just get out, right? But in, like, full thing, there's going to be some pretty thorough checks to make sure that, like, the delivery person is allowed into the house, and that the people who are accepting it or taking it from the freight this and getting you from place to place. And over here at Luna Park, yeah, it's just some dude sitting in the back with his feet up.
More evidence supporting this being like a small regional park is the plushes they dump into the claw machine. There's nothing branded in there. There's no crater face plushes in there. It's like bunnies and bears and just random
Yeah,
off
I
the
like
shelf
where you're
plushes.
going with the connection to Chuck E. Cheese, right? Because like that's this arcade. That's what I'm going to. That's like the one of the shows I'm going to. It's like the Chuck E. Cheese company just made a larger theme park version.
Cool. So that I think that about wraps it up in for Luna Park for Unreal Attractions. And it's fascinating too because in our conversation I went into it going, oh yeah, no, this is the moon's version of Disneyland. But as we
Well,
chatted and we started to dissect this,
yeah,
we determined that's not the case at all.
no, like no one, no righteous person wants to visit this place. It's not a history park, right? Even though they have the
Nope.
one in history ride, it's not a history park. They don't eat. Fry laments this. Like they don't even really make frequent reference to the real moon. He has to like make a mistake to actually find the lunar lander, right? Like when you would imagine, even he imagines, you would imagine 3,000 years from now, there is a moon theme park. It would be something like the Smithsonian presents, right? It would be those types of space exploration and historical exhibits. And that's not what this is.
No.
This is like an off-brand family entertainment center that has grown to a large scale all on its own, isolated from everyone else in the universe.
Their park attractions don't have the safety standards that they should because Fry is able to take a prop from an animated figure and use that to derail his ride vehicle. So it
Yeah.
doesn't have the safety checks or engineering that should be
Right.
involved.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's I think the merchandise also speaks for itself too. Is that there's nothing particularly branded. It's all just equivalent to like I visited Santa Cruz, and there's no mention of
They
where in
do
Santa Cruz you go
eventually
to.
they do eventually build a really nice parking. So, they at least in that sense, it continues to be popular. It's not popular,
No, there's always
but
a
it's
market
certainly
for the
not.
smaller parks.
Yeah, yeah, it's certainly not like gold standard, right? It's a hodgepodge of things that I think they must have grown over time, probably at like as really cheap real estate because of
Yeah,
whatever war or forgetfulness of the moon. Monsanto or Monsanto, whichever one it is, probably got it cheap, built their little bubble. And anyone who wants to go to, it's close. It's right by Earth. You just go out,
yeah.
have a good day.
I mean, I think
You know,
at that point, like the moon is the equivalent of you driving 12 hours from Louisiana to Florida. Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so when they leave the planet, Fry does his countdown. He doesn't even get to 10 until he hits the moon. So really, it's not even
That's
that.
right. It's the plane. Like in my example, right? It would have been like the uh the states 2 miles from my house, right? If that's what Luna Park must have been. Yeah, super popular. The lines are full, but it's not the premium theme park. Yeah.
So we'll get onto the books and we'll dive into the second park of Futurama on a later show. But I'd like to thank you, Kyle, for joining us.
Yeah.
If you would like to plug anything or share anything cool you're working on, the mic is yours.
I think nothing in particular. I think it's just been it's fun to kind of go through these shows with you. I think it's a great format. It's a cool thing. I'm around, like I mentioned at the beginning, building a few of my own ventures. Really passionate about interactivity in theme parks, interactivity and socialization in social venues. Nothing immediately coming out of my workshop, but keep your eyes out. They've got a couple of things that are in the works. If you follow me, I'm on LinkedIn with my full name. I'm on some of the other social media sites. You can look up my name or you can look up my handle, The Other Kyle. And as I have things that I find interesting, I share them on the internet. As I have things that are coming out of my workshops, those will be the places to learn.
So thank you for joining us, and also thank to the small child at your feet for joining us.
She is promptly fallen asleep. So
I
we've
think we
done our
might have
job.
captured a little bit of a cameo of her earlier in the episode. So that'd be pretty awesome. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for joining us, and everyone, thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe, follow, share, tell everybody you know. Also, if you have any feedback, anything that we think we missed, you can find us on all the social medias at Unreal Attractions. That's Unreal, UNREEL Attractions. And hey, have a magical day.